I literally soaked up knowledge, and I just cuffed under mentors, and I just gleaned, and I just extracted like all this intimidating information, everything from proper business etiquette to speech pattern.
It's amazing. You always say you are the average of the five people around you. And, if you're growing up in the place you're growing up, well, you're looking around, you're like, oh, I just want to be like these guys,
Yeah.
and it works for in a good way or a bad way. Like, I mean, I did not have any kind of environment like you did, but I was never surrounded by entrepreneurs. So I didn't realize I was an entrepreneur until I was in my early 30s. There's no entrepreneur anywhere to be seen around in my entire environment.
We call that the corporate trap, right?
Yeah.
You think that's your way out. It's going to be just, I'm gonna get a good, I'm gonna go to school, get good grades, get a good job, and I'm gonna, right?
That's the plan, man. That's the plan. That's the only plan I knew. And
that's
like
the corporate trap. Yeah, for me,
your trap was, I don't know what you call that, but it's also
we call that the corner trap. My trap was the corner trap. So for me, outside of just even like my environment, like the neighborhood around me, my mom was a drug dealer, like in her early 20s. My stepfather was a drug dealer. He did 13 years in prison, right? My grandfather was the town weed man in the 60s and 70s, right? So that was my environment. That was normal for us, like a family trade, right? So it wasn't that abnormal for me, but it honestly taught me a lot of entrepreneurial skills very early on.
Yeah. So how did you make the shift then? Like, what caused the shift from that life to a different life?
Two things. One was exposure, right? So in 2002, I was 22 years old. I was a three-time felon by 21 years old. Ended up serving 2.5 years in prison. And in 2002, I was on a parole program in New Jersey. And on that program, one of the mentors was a men's group. We got up on Saturday mornings, and it was like all the felons and all the bad kids. And we had this mentoring session. But the mentor referred me to a mortgage company. He said, "You're clean cut. You speak well. My wife's, instead of you working these warehouse jobs or fighting with the system, working these retail jobs, just to have a job. On parole, you had to keep a job to stay home, right? Just to keep from prison. So I was just getting any kind of odd job to just fulfill the requirements. So this pastor and mentor was like, "Hey, you got more potential than that. Just, he said, why don't you take this card? My wife's a processor at a mortgage company. Go in, they hire commission only as loan officers." I know I did what that was at the time. And so I literally went in and they hired me as a loan officer, as an LO with a 70-30 commission, 30% to me, small side. But I was able to refinance my grandmother's house and refinance my aunt's house in the first 60 days and made like $6,000. And now, so that was exposure I got to the industry. Like, oh shit, there's actually something outside of the streets that make real money.
Isn't that funny? Sometimes some other person sees something in you that you don't see yourself.
That's a fact.
All right, so
that's usually the case.
That's usually the case. Yeah. It happened to me, and hopefully I've done it a few times to other people. It's so obvious to me and another person. The other person doesn't see it at all, and it happened to me the other way around in the same way, and it looks like it happened to you. And so now you're on a different track.
Yeah. That's why mentors are so important, and coaches are so important, right? Advisors. So that exposure helped me get on that right track. And the second part helped me get on the right track was, it was pure self-belief, right? It was like, at 2005, I was on a street corner in Newark, New Jersey, on South 10th and Springfield, and I was like overseeing a heroin dealing operation. And I was 25 years old. I'm like, "Jay, where are you gonna be when you're 30? I'm like, "Bro, you got 3 felonies in 3 different states. At 25, you're still selling dope in Newark, New Jersey. These guys are carrying guns. There's Bloods, there's Crips." It's like, bro, what are you doing with your life? So I just literally was like, are you a hustler or are you a drug dealer? If you're a hustler, you can hustle anything. If you're a drug dealer, you only can sell drugs. And I really just challenged myself, like, nah, man, like I'm bigger than this, I'm better than this. And I was like, what would it be like if that's 10 years at that point, 15 years old to 25 years old, that I was literally a drug dealer. That was my vision, that was my goal, that was my vision board, right? That was like my aspiration, was to be my town's biggest drug dealer. Like that was, par none, that was my, right?
So you looked at the highest version of that. You're like, all right, I want to be that.
I want to be the kingpin. Like, I want to be the Frank Lucas. Like, I want like all that. Like, and that's how we ran our operation. Like, I want a big operation. I mean, I was at 17, I was making like $5,000 a week. right? So I'm calculating how many weeks I got to go to 1 million, right? Like I'm always like, I want to be a millionaire, right? It's like all of us. I just thought I could make 1 million selling drugs.
You were an entrepreneur with visions and a plan, like everybody else. It just so happens it was an illegal thing, but really, the mindset and the things you went through were with you at an early age. Maybe misguided, but you probably learned a lot.
Man. Yeah, it was the same thing. It was commission splits. It was inventory. It was
marketing,
giving out samples. It was top of funnel. It was all of that, man.
But then you put yourself on another track.
Yes.
And I study this sometimes with
God did.
Yeah, God did. Yeah, no, I understand.
God did.
I understand, but you gotta take a first step also. You know, he's not going to do that for you. I understand. That's a good point. But when you trace back the first step that someone takes in a different direction, it all comes with a decision that someone makes in their mind. Like, what was the decision that you made? Do you remember the moment or the time when you said, no, I'm going to walk in this direction?
Yeah. And you know what? Definitely popped back to me when you said decision, and also with like self-worth. The thing is like, I felt I was better than the outcome that I was on track for. Like, no, like I'm better than that. I'm bigger than this. I'm better than this, right? So I seen more of myself, probably for the first time in a long time. And that moment was, I walked away for that day. Like I didn't say, you know what, I'm gonna get one more flip in, or when I get to this number, I'm gonna quit. I literally had that epiphany, that real personal realization moment. And I literally broke my trap phone. I had like 2 ounces of coke left. I gave it to one of my partners, my dope I had left, my heroin. I gave it to my other partner. I'm like, yo, I'm out, y'all got it. And I literally just quit the dope game.
What
I
happened?
Had like 30 grand left.
What happened there? Because your entire life shifted in that very moment. Like, was it was it just simply a moment of grace? Was there some kind of trauma? Like what happened in that moment?
Well, you have to realize that, like, I literally come from like, excuse me, I come from standing on welfare lines with my mom, and I come from like the free lunch tickets in school, and I come from like the hand-me-down clothes and like real poverty, right? Like lights off, like heating your household by boiling water, So when I realized that, but then I seen 6 figures as a drug dealer, right? So I changed my family's dynamic. So I became the man, right? I had a blue-faced Submariner Rolex at 17. Like, this is early, right? I had a Lincoln Navigator cash paid at 19 years old with no license. So like I had done phenomenal things from my worldview at that time. And so what I was saying is, like, if you're this phenomenal of a guy, Cartier roaster, right? Like all this stuff, I'm in my early 20s. So if you're this dynamic, that this operation, I was employing my cousins. I was like, all this, I had a drug trafficking ring from New York to Baltimore to Maryland, all sophisticated stuff, 8 cell phones, all of this. If you're this complex of a thinker and you have this much potential, then it was the moment for me to be like, all right, prove it in something else, and do it in somewhere your mom can be proud of you. Do it somewhere your daughter, a daughter at 18 years old, I'm a teenage dad, and like do something your daughter can be proud of, instead of going to her father's father-daughter days at school and lying to everybody about what I do for a living. Yeah. Right. So it was a sense of pride then that really just kicked in, was like, you know what? Let me challenge myself and let me go be a better version of myself.
It requires a lot of reflection. I obviously sat there and you thought about things. And many people don't do that. They don't sit there long enough and think, where am I currently going? And if I keep on a path, is that where I want to end up? Is that the destination I want? And you obviously did that, though you had actually a pretty good life, at the time. But now, if I remember correctly, so you took this mortgage job in like 2005, if I'm keeping track right. And in 2012, you were the real estate expert on the Today Show.
Yeah.
What happened in 7 years?
Yeah. So my first mortgage job, 2002. I did it for like a year, graduated parole, then dumped it, went back to the streets. 2005 is when I had the final epiphany of like, you know what, let me try that mortgage thing, that real estate thing full time. So in 2005, decided that seed that I was planting in 2002 that I liked. I liked the financing. I liked the numbers, the points. I liked the commissions. I got it. It was business, right? And I liked real estate. I liked the appreciation, all that. So I got real serious about it. And the same energy, the same 24/7 mentality that I had in the streets, like I would do drug transactions that call me anytime, right? I'm never asleep. I'm always gonna get up for the money. So I took that same mentality to real estate. So it's like my clients, like there was no like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, you can't call me. Like, no, we're talking about money, call me. So I just took a real serious ambition to it, but not just the practice of marketing or business development or building a pipeline, but I learning. I literally soaked up knowledge and I just cuffed under mentors and I just gleaned and I just extracted like all this intimidating information, everything from proper business etiquette to speech patterns, to greetings, to salutations, to email signatures. I had to read, I never had an email before. I had to learn how to work an email for the first time in 2005, 2006. So like, these are all new concepts to me, but I literally just engulfed myself in it the same way, 16-year-old Jay engulfed himself into how do you break down a gram of cocaine and bag up 520s and how do you put it to the block, right? So I just approached it with a real sponge-like mentality and I executed. I had a lot of, my risk tolerance is higher than most people because my day-to-day life for 10 years would cost me my freedom or my life. So like investing only with your credit or investing with real estate, right? It's like the concepts that we have in business and real estate, they don't like turn my stomach. That's not real risk to me. And so I was able to approach the business just like a real informed, but yet aggressive way. And I also understood verticals. So like I was a loan officer first, and then I closed my first 2-family house and I saw commissions the realtor made, and then I got my real estate license. And then I got my next 2-family house and then, right, and started building my real estate portfolio. But I was getting commissions as a loan officer and as a realtor, not on just what I purchased or financed for myself, but now I was Mr. Real Estate because I had this like wealth of knowledge of financing or I had access as a realtor, but then I also understood numbers and returns as an investor.
So you got into real estate, through the brokerage and the loan side of things. And it sounds like you started buying some rental properties as well, of single family houses.
From the very beginning. Yeah.
How many of those did you do before you started shifting?
Oh man. Probably 30 to 40 transactions on the acquisitions or wholesale side. Probably 3.5 million or so in real estate holdings, and a lot of transactions as a loan officer. And I became a branch manager, actually. I managed 2 mortgage branches. So I rose a branch manager and had teams under me in 2007, 2008. But I'm saying all those things prepared me to work for Sotheby's in 2012 as the first African-American male hired by Prominent Property Sotheby's in Bergen County, and list a $10 million French chateau in Alpine, New Jersey. We didn't sell it though, but I did get the listing. And break into these markets and become a celebrity realtor on NBC and a real estate expert for Today's Show. All that was just like a body of work of me being just so immersed in the business, right? I just like was really immersed in the business and had all those years of just my life experiences to take with me.
Now you have a fund now that you have as well. You've raised,
Yes.
I don't know, a good amount of money for that fund. And why did you do that fund? And tell us a little bit about what you're doing with that.
Yeah, so through all my time in mortgages and investment and development and just being a real estate entrepreneur, I often or always had to always go to someone else for capital, right? And many times we went as a African in America minority, they say, like we had to go to outside of our community in order to get capital, right? Where a lot of times some communities can invest right within their own community. And so as gentrification was happening and as we understood the need for capital to really fuel the development of our communities, I was like, well, what would it look like if we were able to come together and have small micro investments, so like democratize capital raising and allow the non-accredited investor and the accredited investor to invest together.